So he's one of the most annoying and irritating planets out there, for sure. You know, astrologically, people complain about Saturn so very much. You know, he kicks our butts around about the age of 29. You feel it coming in at age 28, and it might be easing off 30, 31. He can cause a real stink in our lives. He's got a fearsome reputation. And of course, I'm talking about Saturn. And he is the sort of planet of the moment right now, because he's about to go into the sign of Aries on the 25th of May. Now, in this video, what I really want to do is give you all the kinds of heads up about Saturn and how he may well be expressing himself in the sign of Aries. I mean, he's going to be there for 2.5 years, or 2 years, 5 months. So not quite 2.5 years. 2 years, 5 months, but that is long enough. It's in a really, really strong position. Now, he is going to be moving in between Aries and Pisces a little bit more. He's not making his final ingress into the sign of Aries until the 14th of February 2026. So we're in this kind of transitional stage right now. And so what I'm going to do in this video is, in the first part, really explore Saturn. You know, the Saturn mythology, how he shows up, what he means in the sign of Aries, and possibly, you know, like how it was expressed 30 years ago. Where did it happen in your chart? If you're over, maybe if you're around about 40 or over, you might remember the time when Saturn was last in that part of your chart. It's also worth sort of understanding what that part of your chart represents. 0 degrees Aries, he's going to be crossing over. So I'm going to be giving you some tools and ideas about that. And then in the second part, what I'm going to do is break down Saturn even further and go through sign by sign forecasts. Short forecasts, just to understand the sort of energy shift that's going on from him being in the sign of Pisces and going into the sign of Aries, and that kind of little dancing around that he's doing. He is going back into Pisces in September. So, you know, this is a real sort of interim moment for Saturn. It's like we are taking stock of what we've already learnt, moving into a new direction, but still, you know, we're not really boldly stepping forward. So, yeah, if you want to zoom ahead, then check out all of the chapters. You'll see them below. But anyway, if you're new to this channel, hi, my name's Louisa Tanner Munson, and I love to explore astrological planets and patterns and meanings. You know, I think astrology is a tool to help us really live our lives. You know, I try not to let astrology disturb my actual flow. I mean, I get quite busy with it here, and yes, it does disturb my flow. But I mean, you know, in my body and in my mind, you know, I think it's really easy, especially if you're new to astrology, you know, to go really, really strongly into it and then think, oh my God, this is happening and this is happening. And what that means is this and this and this. And so I try to use astrology in such a way that you can see the guide, you can see the blueprint, but that you don't have to use it as a stick to beat yourself with. That's why I call it feel-good astrology, because if it's feeling hard, then I don't want to be associated with it, frankly. So there you go. That's a little bit about me. If you are returning to this channel, then welcome back. Thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate that. So anyway, let's get started. Let's have a look. So I love having slides because they give me a good prompt. And I've got my Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius. And if you know what that means, you'll know that I like to go around the houses quite a bit. So let's have a look. So Saturn in Aries, what I'm going to look at then is the aspects of the Ingress charts for when he moves in to Aries on the 25th of May, and then when he also moves in on the 14th of February. Each of those charts, the exact moment he moves into Aries, they both have a different feel, and that will, I think, determine how we use that energy. I'll have a look at the Sabian symbol for these particular charts, you know, for 0 Aries. I've used this quite a lot recently because there's a lot of planets that have been going over 0 Aries. 0 Aries is like the start of the zodiac. It really has such a prominent message for us right now. And like I said, at the end, there's going to be Saturn in Aries for all 12 signs of the zodiac. Now, you know, I really like to think about this from an ascendant perspective. So if you already know your ascendant, I would check it out. When I do these forecasts, I do them with a whole sign, Western tropical feel, or model even. Now, I personally, when I work with clients, I use Placidus, but I think it's much easier, you know, in the sake of doing forecasts, to look at it from a whole sign. If you understand what I mean, it's like each house has one sign in it. And so I'm using that model. It might differ from yours, but if you've got enough astrological know-how, you'll know how to do it. So if you're new to this, what I would suggest is you listen to the sign for your sun. And if you also know your ascendant, you listen to that one first, because that's even more accurate. But most people say that my forecasts work for sun and ascendant. So have fun with that. Anyway, let's go a bit deeper. So now this is an AI version of Saturn in Aries. So these were actual statues of Saturn from different times. This, and obviously this is one of the NASA pictures of Saturn, which, I'm a bit suspicious of that, I have to say. I'm not entirely sure that our universe and our solar system is exactly as we've been told it is. I tend to see it all as energetics. But anyway, these are actual statues. And this one here is really describing Saturn as, the god of agriculture and harvest and time, and the sort of patience that comes with that, and the great abundance that comes when you look after the earth. So there's a real kind of father kind of energy there. And he's looking very much like he's like walking through a valley with a load of goats behind him. But this one is the one that I think most people would know him more for. Saturn's got a really nasty reputation. He is absolutely acquiring power. Actually, not so much power, but responsibility. He wants to have responsibility for everything, which I think is a bit different to power. Like power is, you just want to be in charge. But that doesn't mean to say that you're going to micromanage everything. And one of the big complaints I have about Saturn is the level and the depth of the micromanagement that goes on. You'll know that sort of Saturn feeling if you've ever gone to work. And I've worked for a lot of corporations. If you've ever done corporate work, in one of these organizations, you've got real Saturnian types in all the middle management roles, like all the CEOs. And if you're one of them, by the way, please forgive me. I probably would like you if I met you personally. I'm just talking about my own experience. But people that can take responsibility and manage a series of people and processes and get them all working together. And it can be quite mechanistic, and it's almost anti-natural. It's not like a natural flow of things. Saturn is really building structures, unnatural structures to, make everyone toe the line, and it can become a bit of a mechanistic thing. And of course, we see that in business. So yeah, talking about Saturn, let's look at his actual story a little bit deeper. So Saturn's the Roman name for this particular god and the planet that we've associated with it. He's known as Kronos in Greek mythology. He's the son of Uranus, and then he's the father of Pluto, Neptune, and Jupiter. So 3 of our male planets, and then Ceres, Vesta, and Juno. These are the goddesses. I actually put them into most of my readings, in fact. So he's the father of 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls. And young Saturn, when he was young, he heard a prophecy that when he would come into power, he would be usurped by one of his children. And he also feared, that he would never get power. And his father's kind of free, high level consciousness ways, Uranus is very much, the god of the heavens, god of the sky. He can definitely create storms, with his thunderbolts and lightning and stuff. So Uranus can appear to be quite cruel at times, because something can come out of the blue, like a bolt out of the blue. But, that air energy is all about the, the thought, the different systems, and things can change really, really quickly. And so Saturn's influence was a lot more grounded, in the agriculture, the wealth, and manifesting stuff. So he heard that he was going to be usurped by one of his children. And so first of all, he castrated his father. And then when his children came along, his wife, I can't remember her name now, Rhea, there you go. She would pass a child to him when she gave birth, and then he would promptly eat the child. Now with the last child, which is Jupiter, she tricked him. She put Jupiter, she took him over to Crete to be raised by different characters. And she wrapped up a stone in some swaddling and gave it to Saturn, and he ate what he thought was his son. So many years later, so Jupiter grew up, he learnt the truth, and then he went to avenge his siblings. And so he made Saturn vomit out all of his siblings, and then they all came into power. So Pluto became god of the underworld, Neptune became god of the oceans or the seas, Jupiter well, he ended up really taking the place of Saturn. Ceres is the goddess, like she's like the earth goddess. You might call her Mother Nature. Vesta is the goddess of truth and, you know, that absolute integrity. And Juno is the goddess of marriages, and she's absolutely about dedication and commitment. So, you know, the boys really got a load of the land, and Ceres got quite a lot there as well. So very, very interesting. Yes, and Jupiter is also a god of the skies. He's a lot like Uranus. You know, I think the Uranian and the Jupiterian energy really goes well together. And, you know, Saturn it finds it very difficult because both Uranus and Jupiter are so expansive. So, yes, so, you know, he would go to quite a lot of bother to make sure he got his power. And then he would try and control things. And so that is how he lost his power. So, you know, Saturn can be painted as quite a sad character because he wasn't prepared to share. He lost it all, which is kind of interesting. Now, let's have a look at the planetary cycle with Saturn. So this is a 29-year cycle. It might seem a little bit like it's extra, like it's 29 and a half, because sometimes Saturn will go into a sign like he's doing right now. He's going into a sign, then moving out, and then going back in a little bit later. So sometimes it might look like he's got a 29 and a half year cycle, but, you know, the last time he went into the sign of Aries, 0 Aries, was on the 7th of April, 1996. And this is going right the way round to the 25th of May. So this is a 29-year cycle. You can see that the transits in all the different signs are relatively even. You know, Sagittarius and Capricorn here, they had the longest transit times. You know, so Saturn was in sign of Sagittarius for 2.7 years. Same with Capricorn. And then, you know, the smallest ones were Cancer and Leo with 2.1 years. This one in Aries, the next one is going to be 2.5 years or 2.5 years. So it's interesting. Approximately, it's 2.4 years that he spends in each sign of the zodiac. Now, because Saturn is quite slow moving, if you've got, in fact, recently, you know, he's been going through this part of our chart in the sign of Pisces. Now, I've got my moon there, and I've also got my Jupiter there, and I've also got Ceres there, and also Juno there. And so as Saturn came over, as he comes into the conjunction, and then he makes that conjunction and he goes beyond that conjunction, it can take quite a while. Now, sometimes he will also go backwards. So he'll retrograde. He appears to go retrograde, go over that point again, and then go forwards. So roughly, and I've checked this out with quite a few different birth charts of people that I know who've had a big Saturn thing going on in the last few years. And I just checked with their signs, how long was Saturn affecting them for? And I would say it's around about 10 months. So, you know, he was in a conjunction with my moon for around about 10 months, give or take his retrogrades and so on and so forth. So if you can see, if you've got something in the sign of Aries, like your sun, your moon, your ascendant, your north node or south node, or in fact, any planet, in fact, but those are the main ones. If you've got them in the sign of Aries, then at some point during this next 2.4 years, 2.5 years, you know, Saturn is going to make a conjunction with them over the course of 10 months. And so, you know, his energy, because he is somebody that wants to be obeyed, and, you know, he can be seen as quite constrictive. So, you know, if your life is a bit of a mess and you're not very organized and maybe you haven't been working hard enough, Saturn tends to give you a bit of a hard time. So, you know, negatively, Saturn can feel really quite constrictive. He can bring about a sense of low energy, and it can be quite difficult. You can have real serious issues and heavy responsibilities come up. So, for instance, for me, when he was in the sign of Pisces, that was happening in my 4th house, and of course, that's a difficult place. You know, the 4th house is about your home, and how your home flows and stuff. And it's right at the bottom of your chart. And so I often, I found the last time that Saturn went through here as well, that I get really low energy, especially when he comes over my moon. I feel really ill. You know, so that's something to work out. Like if you know he's coming into a part of your chart that represents something that you don't manage very well, then as he comes in, you can have a much heavier responsibility come to you. Now, he's not all bad. You know, he is actually quite helpful, because if you're ready for greater responsibility, his influences can help you to discern a lot more about this particular area of your life. And he can make you a lot more harder working and really help you have greater stability. So he's really helpful. Like where he's coming into right now for me is in my 5th house, which is the place of my creativity, my children, my sensuality, how I like to live my life as large as I can. And so I think with a little bit of discernment and a little bit more discipline, I can probably do a bit more. But if I don't pay attention to it, I may well find that the things I love doing become a prison, you know, because Saturn can constrict. So he's important to pay attention to. And, you know, when he goes through some houses, it's easier, and others it's slightly harder. Now, he's going to be in the sign of Aries from the 25th of May, 2025, right the way through to, I can't remember when it is, the 13th of April, 2028. So this is a long, slow, steady process. Now, like I said, he's moving into Aries. On the 1st of September, he's moving back into Pisces. So in between now and September, he's going to start to go retrograde. And then in between September and February, he'll start to move forwards again. So it's a bit like you're driving down the road. You realize you've passed the house you needed to go to, and you reverse back, but you reverse too far, and you think, oh, I've got to move forwards again. And so the house in the road is like that 0 Aries I'm talking about. So he's moving around. Now, it's worth having a look in your chart if you know how to, because he's going to be moving between 1 degree Aries back to 25 Pisces and then forwards again. So if you've got something in between these degrees, so 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 Pisces, 0 Aries, 1 Aries, you know, he's going to be touching it. The chances are you'll already know this if you do, because you'd have had Neptune going over it and a whole lot of other things this year, including a Mercury and a Venus retrograde as well. So I'm sure you'll already know if you do have those. But similarly, in the opposite signs of those, so if you've got something from 1 degree Libra to 25 degrees Virgo, you may well find that Saturn moving in opposition to an important point or planet there is also causing a disturbance in the field. So it's interesting and important, I think, to just really monitor what 0 Aries means to you, and what area of life it is managing in your birth chart, because that is showing where you need to toughen up for sure. Because as as Saturn comes over it, you know, you will get a bit of a challenge. And if you're ready for it, you could actually really go up quite high. I mean, Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. And, you know, with Capricorn, you know, it's the slow and steady, like it's the rabbit versus the tortoise, or the hare and the tortoise in the race. You know, Capricorn is, well, sometimes he is a bit of a hare, but actually I think Capricorn, they often have a long-term view. They're not worried about getting success straight away. They understand that everything takes time. And so, yeah, you know, if you are patient and determined and disciplined, and you've been working really hard for this area that Saturn's coming into, he's going to lift you up. And it won't be without hard work, but he will lift you up for sure. So I think that's worth, you know, reminding yourself of. You know, I think it could be really worrying if you just think Saturn's going into this part of your chart and it's going to be a disaster. I really hope that you can just see where you might need to just do a little bit more and start to work with his energy rather than deny it or ignore it. I think that's when the problems start. So some of the key words about him, which have already come out, responsibility and discipline are really important for him. Structures and boundaries, authority, like he is an authority, and he likes to limit things. And some of that is because he realizes you can't do everything all at the same time. You have to focus on one thing at a time usually. And again, that brings a certain amount of maturity and karma. So you might find you go round and round in circles with Saturn because you're not listening to the lessons that are coming up. There's usually a lot of hard work, and it can really feel oppressive. There can be delays. And it's where we need to commit and bear in mind that there's a time thing going on as well, and there can be restrictions. So yeah, he does sound like a big old boogeyman. Now, if I think about Aries keywords, it's the first sign in the zodiac. It's fiery, really determined. It's very much like, this portrayal with this AI art, with the ram's head. It's courageous, active. It takes initiative and leads. There's a lot of independence with the Aries sign. They don't want to be told what to do. Very impulsive and passionate. They will, if they want something, they'll move towards it very assertively. There's a lot of drive, a sense of competition. If you think of rams, fighting in the springtime, there's a lot of confidence. And they can be quick-tempered, direct, enthusiastic, and very much in a warrior pose. This guy is like ready to, like scare anyone that wants to overpower him. So he's confident in himself. Now, if we combine these energies to get a feel for what Saturn in Aries might represent, I think it's showing us where he's showing up. He's showing you where you need to toughen up and learn some responsibility. He's going to push us way beyond what we thought was possible for ourselves so that we can grow much further. So this is really getting you to lead yourself forwards. This is really important that you're developing your confidence, so you're moving forwards with confidence. And I think it is about embodying being a sovereign individual, like you can check out his pose here. This is somebody who is going to do what he wants to do. He's an individual. He's not going to fall in line with other people. So this is about how you can come back into that energy. And I do think that kind of energy has been maligned a lot in recent years. So people have been talking for years about toxic masculinity, and really focusing that all the woes of the world are based on the toxic man. And as a consequence, if you look at media and politics and all sorts of different things, like said over the last, definitely from the COVID times, I've noticed there's been a celebration of the man that is not in his power, or there's an idea that men are more powerful when they're not being yangy. And also that, and it's interesting, the roles have been reversed a little bit. Now women are being encouraged to being like forthright and strong, and to be quite yangy. So it's almost like the men have been encouraged to be a lot more yin, and the women have been encouraged to be a lot more yangy. I actually think what's coming up with Saturn in Aries is we're all being encouraged to step into our own authenticity, our own power, and to get more independent. The herd mentality, which really comes out, like the Pisces energy can really be led, is quite scattered by contrast to the Aries energy. The Aries energy is really direct. It's like a spear. It's like an arrow. The Pisces energy, where Saturn has been, is all over the place. And of course, Saturn would have really struggled to make any headway there. And so we are absolutely coming out of, like, Pisces is also a dream state. It's, it's dreamy. There's no boundaries. Nobody knows what is going on. Everything gets mixed. And that's, I sort of alluded to that, with what I've seen as being almost role reversals going on with the genders. And, by me identifying that doesn't mean to say I agree or disagree with it, by the way. But the idea of Saturn in Aries, I think, is that everybody is encouraged to be their own leader, to be their own sovereign individual, so that they don't have to ask for help so much, and that they don't have to rely on people, but they fix their own problems. So people are coming into a time of being resourceful for themselves. Because, as you go through the zodiac, it's a story. It's a long story from the birthing point, which is Aries, right the way through to the last sign, which is like the death of the stories. It's a kind of dreamlike state, like I mentioned, with Pisces. So this is us waking up again and coming into a new sense of authority with ourselves. So, take that as it feels right for you. I mean, you might interpret that you might just want to develop a feeling of safety when you're out and about. So that might be how you come into your power, or you might be somebody who has been working for other people and you want to work for yourself. So I really see that this is about us stepping forwards. There is definitely a forward momentum emphasized within this. And I'm really quite excited about it. Before I go any further, I just want to thank everybody that supports this channel with donations. Sometimes people buy me a coffee, and there's a link in the description. I've also got people that have joined my membership, and there's lots of different things going on there. And I'll probably tell you a little bit about that later on. But for everybody that supports this channel in all the different ways that you do, thank you so very much, because you give me the time. You give me a little bit of an energy boost. It really helps me. It encourages me to do what I love to do. So thank you so much. Anyway, let's go a little bit deeper. So this is where I think will be quite helpful to understand. There's a lot of detail here. So the first question is, where is 0 Aries in your chart? So this is actually the chart for when Saturn goes into the sign of Aries, 0 degrees. So, this one, it looks like it is here in the 12th house. For you, it might be down here. For me, it's the cusp between the 4th and the 5th house. So find out where 0 Aries is in your chart, and then find out what was happening to you last time Saturn moved over that point. And that was on the 7th of April, 1996. Now, obviously, he can be around that point for up to 10 months. So you might want to go 5 months before. So that's December 95, right the way through to, say, September of 96. What was going on for you? How were you moving forwards in your life? How were you leading yourself in a new way? I know what was going on for me. I was I don't know how old I was, but like 20, 21. And I'd been living in France for a year, and I was going back out to live in France and to go even more deeply and more independently into what I was doing. And I was managing a campsite for a French campsite owner, and I loved it. I absolutely adored being out there. And so I had that sense of being in charge. I had that sense of being away and leading my own life and being in a new country. And I really felt in my power. I felt like I was so capable. I had a lot of responsibility because I had quite a bit of staff, and yeah, it was a great time, really fun time for me, where I was learning and growing, and also falling in love for the first time as well. So really big stuff happening in my young life at that point. So if you can remember what was going on for you, like how were you moving forwards? That is what he is there to encourage you to do. So how are you moving forwards, taking charge, feeling really lit up, feeling really strong in yourself? Now, I looked back to 7th of April, 96 to see what was going on. I was expecting to see loads and loads of different things. And in fact, there were loads of stuff about sports, which I guess is quite an Aries thing. Loads and loads of stuff about sports and a lot about celebrity stuff. But I did see, and this is all worldwide stuff, there was 106 civilians killed just after that, when the Israel Defense Forces accidentally shelled the UN compound. On the 24th, the UN and Iraq ended a third round of negotiations over possible sales of $1 billion of oil. There was a massacre in Australia. It's the worst massacre in modern history, where somebody shot and killed 35 people in Port Arthur, Tasmania, which changed gun laws. Again, it's a real sort of Aries theme, and also about power and taking over. And then on April the 30th, again, there was another petroleum. So look, oil, petroleum, gas prices, resources seem to be a theme back then, 30 years ago. So negotiations around resources, our fuel, our gas, and then, massacres or things that have come out of the blue and killed people seems to be a theme. So that is something, obviously I don't want to speak it into action, but and you could say that somewhere around the world there's always something like that going on. It doesn't make it right, by the way, but I would say these are really, really big themes for what's coming up. But you may well be thinking in your own life, like, how are you being heavy-handed, or is someone being heavy-handed around you? Like with that theme there. And how are you resourcing yourself? Do you have everything that you need so that you feel powerful in your own life? It's definitely something worth thinking about. So we know that 30 years ago then, or 29 years ago in 1996, that there were some aggressive outbursts, and also that there were situations to do with our resources and how we manage those. And I guess all of this is feeding back to the idea of survival. If you think of Mars, Aries, which is ruled by Mars, and Mars is the planet of um, standing in front of people and like standing up for yourself, and having defenses and knowing how to fight back. It's all about survival. Like Mars is absolutely about survival. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. If you think of it as being born, in your first year of life, it's all about your survival. It's all about getting the right resources around you, and to ensure that you've got the right boundaries, and so on and so forth. So, another question you might choose to ask yourself is, where might you need boundaries? Where might you need to stand up for yourself? Where might you need to be much stronger? So anyway, what I'm going to do now is bring in the two Ingress charts. So we've got this one from the 25th of May, 2025. That's when Saturn goes into Aries. That's the moment it happens. And I want to look at the programming, the planetary picture. And then the final Saturn into Aries. So, obviously on September the 1st, Saturn goes back into Pisces. He moves back here. But on the February the 26th, that's the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, he goes into Aries for the last time, and he's going to stay in Aries until 2028. So, initially as Saturn's coming into Aries, this first Ingress chart is really, really strong. We've got these beautiful connections between Pluto and Uranus. In fact, Saturn is pretty much at the midpoint between these two. Obviously, Pluto and Uranus are in a trine together as well. Saturn is also in a conjunction with the node, and also in a conjunction with Neptune. So this is really, really, I would say, with all of these lovely sextiles and this trine energy, all feeding in together. I would say that this is really quick, effective. There's new ways of making permanent change. I would say that's really the Pluto and Uranus effect. But this positive new responsibility. So as Saturn is coming to Aries, we might be thinking, okay, how can we survive? How can we thrive? How can we take more responsibility for ourselves? But it seems kind of fun, quick, really positive. Now, we do also have this square to Jupiter, and it's getting stronger until the 15th of June, and then it's going to ease off. So there is this like this sticking point, and Saturn and Jupiter have been in a square since the summer of last year, and this is the third and final square, like exact square, on the 15th of June. And so, yes, there is this sense of real quick implementation of new rules or new guidelines or new blueprints for yourself. You might decide that where Saturn is in your chart is where you want to push ahead and create something new for yourself, with, taking a lot more responsibility for yourself. And yet, you might find that until after mid-June, by which point Jupiter has also changed signs, then I think after that point, things will really start to take off. So in terms of Saturn going into Aries, I think lots of ideas, lots of really good feeling, a sense of where you want to bolster yourself up. I think that's really, really strong. And I think it speeds up after Jupiter moves into the sign of Cancer on the 9th of June. And then after the 15th of June, once their tight square between Saturn and Jupiter is over. Of course, Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. So Jupiter's very, very happy here. So things will absolutely speed along. And of course, from the 7th of July, things will also speed along. So there's a lot of, between the 25th of May and the 7th of July, which isn't much time, it's like what, a month and a half. We've got these three planetary changes, boom, boom, boom. So this is a really exciting time. Also, Neptune is in a conjunction with Saturn, and I want to say here, right from this moment, they are dancing in a conjunction pretty much. They have been for for a good couple of months, right the way through, way like beyond February of next year. But on the 20th of February 2026, they will both be exactly in a conjunction at 0 degrees in the sign of Aries. That's super, super strong. This aspect comes along. I think this is off the top of my head. I need to check, but I think it's every 33 years. So it's really, really rare, like Saturn and Neptune coming together, but rarer still that they come together at 0 degrees in the sign of Aries. It is super duper rare. And of course, we're feeling into this. They don't go into the exact conjunction until February, but they are dancing around this. So you've got the energy of creativity, of taking it up a notch spiritually, of working with masks and, getting a lot clearer about what masks you're using. There's a really strong sense of wanting to do things for the right reason, like deep compassion, forgiveness, love, unconditional love, as much as any human can do. And Saturn coming in here could really show you how you can lead the way as a spiritual entrepreneur or somebody who is doing something really beautiful for the planet. And, Saturn is coming in here to do something very, very special. So these guys in a conjunction, they are kind of dancing around that potential. And, after Saturn makes his final ingress into the sign of Aries on the 14th of February, just 6 days later, they come into that very, very powerful conjunction. So in many ways, we are at this kind of real sort of beginning session, like we are sort of starting to integrate this new energy, and we can be a bit playful with it. It's not really getting fully focused and fully kind of funneled, where it comes out as a real sort of like pure beam of energy until really mid-February and to the end of February. So I think whatever you're working on right now is likely to culminate. In fact, I think there's going to be a lot of culmination around the time of, the end of February. And then in April of 2026, Uranus will finally properly go into the sign of Gemini. He's going to dance in between Gemini and Taurus. So yeah, these are really strong changing times. And of course, again, Saturn shows us where we are taking responsibility for that. And of course, we are playing into it, we're stepping into it, we're practicing it. But from 2026, it really feels like things get real, really real. So, make of that what you will. And of course, like I said, shortly, I'm going to start doing the forecast on a sign by sign basis. I really do recommend that you check out your ascendant if you don't already know it, and listen to your ascendant sign and also your sun sign. So you get a really good broad spread of that Saturn in Aries energy. Anyway, let's have a look at the other Ingress chart. So this one is speedy. It's fun. I would say it's fun. It could be really deeply transforming with all of these energies here. And there is this sense that oh, and yeah, I put this in my comments. Watch where you are feeling challenged by younger people being better. Because Saturn, if you remember in mythology, Saturn is all about being in charge, and he doesn't like his son usurping him. And of course, Jupiter did usurp him. So there is, I think, the older and the younger. I remember years ago doing a video, likening Saturn a little bit to Darth Vader. Of course, Saturn could also, like you could say Pluto is like Darth Vader, and Jupiter, and I would say also Uranus are a little bit like Luke Skywalker. You've got that sort of older, stern, mature, controlling energy versus the light, the bright, the experimental, and really free and wild energy. And so, yes, you may well find that, coming into this at the end of May, you may well find that you're ready to go, and yet there's a lot to learn from younger people, or there's a lot to learn from younger technology, newer technology. Maybe your thriving that's going to happen is because you get off your high horse, or you step away from the pedestal you've put yourself on, and you check out what's going on underneath you. And I don't mean underneath you that everyone younger than you is underneath you, but if you like we look up to people and we look down to people, metaphorically. So yeah, I also think that is worth really considering. And it's important during this time also to watch out for depressing feelings, because Saturn and Neptune are both known, like Saturn can make us really, really serious. And if you've got Saturn in a difficult place, it can spell a bout of doubting yourself and being quite hard on yourself. And Neptune really shows where you almost just want to be anywhere but here, And you can really gaslight yourself or be really manipulated. And so the two of them coming together in this intense place, if in that part of your chart there could be some depression, or if in that part of your chart you've suffered something or experienced something, it is important to watch out for depressing feelings. So again, I would use the positive aspect of Saturn, i.e. use it to with discernment, to build on something that's already got legs, and to not put all of your energy into things that aren't going to work. So, I mean, that's the whole thing about discernment. And Aries doesn't want to be managing multiple products at the same time, or projects, as the Saturn in Pisces might. The Aries Saturn is going to want to pick the best thing, the thing that's going to yield quicker and faster, and have much better results. So yeah, if you can be disciplined, the depressing feelings are less likely to come in. But it's only when you are allowing all these different things in that it could really get to you. So anyway, if we look at the second ingress chart, it's very, very different. So you've got Saturn and Neptune together exactly at 0 degrees, almost exactly in their conjunction. They are still making the sextile to Uranus and to Pluto, and Pluto and Uranus are still in that. So they're still in that position, but it feels like there's less real support. Saturn isn't really connected to anything else. Jupiter has moved on, which is really, really beneficial. So again, I do think things are going to get moving, but Jupiter and Chiron are in an interesting square. And at the time of this next ingress, Uranus and the Sun are in a square. So how I interpret this one is, whatever is going on, however you're leading yourself forwards with the square between the Sun and Uranus, there is this real need to be independent, and to challenge the version of you that you've had, and to to me it feels like there's a new identity springing up for you that you're like seeing in yourself, and you're going, oh, don't quite recognize myself like that yet. And you're kind of challenged to integrate that. With Jupiter and Chiron in a square, there is a real desire to expand, but also a potential hurt or wound that comes from expansion. So if you've got any bad experiences of expanding too fast or expanding and it not working, that's likely to come up. So it's a very strong time to do with our identity. And of course, 0 degrees in the sign of Aries really does hint at identity. Speaking of that particular degree, let's have a look at the Sabian symbol. So if you're new to Sabian symbols, and you might be, I didn't really know about them until quite recently. Sabian symbols, there are 360 degrees in a circle in our birth chart, in our lovely wheel. And over 100 years ago, I think it's Elsie Wheeler, I think that's her name. I may have got that wrong, but there were these 360 channeled messages, one for every single degree in the zodiacal wheel, in the ecliptic. And since then, other people have further interpreted the channeled messages for each degree. And I particularly like the Linda Hill Sabian symbols. They're brilliant. And she's got this fabulous website called www.sabiansymbols.com. And, this is obviously 0 Aries, but with the Sabian symbols, they always get rounded up to the next degree, because nothing is ever really pure 0 degrees. It's always 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, maybe, so this is the energy of the Sabian symbol for 1 degrees Aries, which equals 0 Aries in our terms. It's fascinating. A woman has risen out of the ocean. A seal is embracing her. The degree is the beginning of the zodiac, where the old gets left behind and a new understanding and awareness comes to light. Something new is emerging and it needs to be welcomed and nurtured. This is the beginning of a whole new impulse, creative and responsive. There's an emergence of a whole new potentiality. Resist looking back to outgrown and unsatisfactory conditions in your life, as they can pull you back to old and unrewarding ways of being. This is also about finding your voice and your feet. Beginnings, emergence of the feminine into concrete manifestation, cycles beginning. the beginning of spring or autumn, confidence in a whole new arena of being, shedding old skins, using the masculine drive to overshadow the emotions, refusing to move into a new state of being because one is held back by the previous life conditions. So that last one is always like a warning of what goes on if you're too much in it. Like if you're like really not if you're refusing to go into the change, things can get really, really sticky for you. So, I absolutely love that. And, that really epitomizes the fact that, Saturn going through Pisces, a lot of our old stories about our responsibilities, how responsible we've been, how many things we've put in place for our survival, all of those stories are starting to fade away. And we're coming into this whole new moment to build up our life in a particular way. And, we can come into our own authority. We can use this energy to step forwards quite impressively. So I also just I will talk about this in a separate video. However, one thing that I remember is, I like to look at 0 degrees Aries to see, where planets have come together and stuff. And there was one marked, really strong conjunction between Uranus and Jupiter. I can't remember what year it was. It might have been, I think it might have been 2011 or 2012. I don't know off the top of my head. But I remember that was the year. And for me, it's right on the cusp of my 5th house, where my children, children come from the 5th house, and, new love springs from the 5th house. And that was the year when I met my husband, and we quickly started a family together. We really didn't hang around. So that was a really, really strong time. And of course, another way of looking at this. So Jupiter and Uranus have a particular cycle. And I can't remember how many years that cycle is off the top of my head. Is it a 13-year cycle? I don't know, but it holds quite a strong cycle. And so every time 2 planets come together, they create a cycle according to the next time that the 2 of them come together. So that particular cycle is, I think, a cycle of innovation. And of course, we had a repeat of that cycle very recently was it just last year in 2024? I can't remember. Everything's moving so fast now. I almost can't remember. But, we had the Jupiter and Uranus conjunction around 21 degrees in the sign of Taurus, if I remember correctly. Starting another new cycle of inspiration. Where these new cycles occur, they are showing you a very sensitive spot in your life and showing you your new journey and how you're likely to take it. So I remember that degree for me is really a strong symbol of change. So if you can't remember what was going on for you 30 years ago in 1996, when Saturn went back over 0 Aries, then in fact, I'm going to find it now. One second. Let me just change my screens. I'm going to do the fact finding now so I can tell you exactly when that particular moment occurred. So let me just bring that onto the oh, it's already there. That's good. So I've gone to astro-seek.com, which I really love. It's a fantastic website. And it's got some very, very powerful research tools. And so if we go to, and I use this quite a lot, aspect search engine. So I want to find out when Jupiter and Uranus come together in their very powerful and creative cycle. And so I'm selecting the aspect of 0 degrees because that's when they come exactly together. And I'm going to go back to the year, let's go back to 1998. So we're going to give it quite a long time. So we should come up with a few moments. Actually, we haven't. I need to go back even further. Let's go back to 1990. Right. No. What's going on? I don't know if it's my internet that's going slow or not. Let's just go back to 1980. We should find at least another 2 cycles in there. I think my internet's gone. It has gone. Okay, I'm still recording apparently, but my internet has gone. So I need to pause this and wait for it to come back. 1 second. Okay, so my internet's back. That's great. And I remember this now. So I remember talking about this in a previous show. So in 1983, and I know quite a few clients who are born with this particular, I seem to attract people with a Jupiter and Uranus conjunction in the sign of Sagittarius. And if you're born in 1983, you may well have that in your chart. That conjunction came up 3 times between February, May, and September. So that's 1983. Then the next one was in 1997. And that's right. And it's at 5 degrees in the sign of Aquarius, which is interesting because Pluto is pretty much at that spot right now. I always think that where these couplings happen, the next time any big planet goes over it, it's kind of activating the energy of it. I don't know that for sure, but that's my sense of it. You know, I work intuitively. And then the one that I was talking about, I said 2012 or 2011. It was 2010 and into 2011. So it was 0 Aries, the two of them. And this conjunction came up a few times. June 2010, September 2010. That's right. It was just before I met my husband. And then on January the 4th, that was literally 2011. That was literally the day when I first met my husband or came into contact with him. So it's really interesting. You know, this conjunction is really, really potent. And so I recognize that, you know, in June of 2010, but if you think 2010 into 2011, that is when these two planets were working together, and they came together very powerfully at 0 degrees Aries. So if you can't remember what was going on in 1996 when Saturn was last there, then can you remember what was significant for you? What was going on that was significant for you in 2010? That was fun, expansive, and unusual and inventive and new. So your life came on in a really new and fresh way, in the way that I described with my husband. All of a sudden things really, really changed, because if you can get the sense of that moment of change, I think it will give you an idea of how things might express and be expanded upon. You know, as we've had so many things going over 0 Aries this year, I felt this sense of anticipation. Like for me, 0 Aries means something's about to change. Something really exciting is about to come in. What I want to show you right now, just before I go to the I go to the sign by sign forecast, I want to show you, just in case you don't know how to find your ascendant, here's a great way. So if you go to Astro, so ASTRO hyphen, so it's that little line, seek.com. It sounds like Astro hide and seek, but astro-seek.com. If you click on free horoscopes, birth natal chart online calendar, and then you've got the chance to put in your time, your date of birth. So let's just make one up. 16th. Be interesting if I make up somebody's birthday. The 16th of July, 1963. Let's say at 3 p.m. 3:12 p.m. And then you can put in any old place. You should put in the place where you were born, not any old place. And then click calculate chart, and it will bring your chart up. Now, the ascendant is always shown, or actually not always, but if you have a look in this area here, often, you know, with a particular charting system like Placidus, which is what I think this is, you'll get this horizontal line at 9 o'clock. If you're looking at it as a clock face, 9 o'clock is where your ascendant is. And you need to know what that sign is. Now, this is the symbol for Scorpio. So I know that ascendant is in the sign of Scorpio. In a whole sign forecast, you'll see something in this area here, and a line with AS or ASC for ascendant, and you'll see the symbol. So you need to know your symbols, but they're really easy to find out anyway. But that would give you an idea as to what is, you know, what sign your chart is starting in. And if you know that, then that will really help you. So I would listen to that particular forecast first for that sign. So if this is the time that you're born, go to Scorpio first. And then if your sun is in another sign, check that one out as well. So I hope that was helpful. So what I'm going to do now is bring on the forecasts for each sign of the zodiac. And in it, what I'm going to do is describe, the energy that you're moving from with Saturn in Pisces, and the energy that you're moving into as Saturn goes into the sign of Aries, and what that might mean, with the wriggling around. So hopefully that'll be helpful to you. Catch you in a minute. Hey Aries, let's see how Saturn going into your own sign is likely to create a change in the way you are being responsible, and in the way that you're focusing yourself. So Saturn is actually going to be going in and out of Aries. So he's into Aries on the 25th of May, out on the 1st of September. He's back into Pisces. Then he's back into Aries again for good on the 14th of February 2026. Now, between those times, there is a bit of a dance going on. And so Aries is finishing up on the Saturn in Pisces theme and starting to play with the Saturn in Aries theme. Now, what this means to you is you're coming out of a time which has been probably quite exhausting. It started March 2023 when Saturn was getting you to sort of understand your hidden fears, and to take responsibility for your fears. Anywhere where you weren't able to take responsibility for your fears, your insecurities, what was going on in your inner mind, it would have brought you down, because Saturn is always rewarding people who are working on the things that aren't working. So, you may well have found yourself in a bit of a low mood, because Saturn can be a little bit depressing in the 12th house. He can really confront us with who we think we are, and we can get a little bit lost there. And so anywhere where you have been working on your spiritual growth and dedicating yourself to maybe meditation or journaling or whatever it is that you think you need to kind of unpack and reformulate your belief systems, that will be really, really working really well. And where this is leading is, like, Saturn's going into your sign, in the sign of Aries, on the 25th of May, and also again on the 14th of February. And during that time, he's getting you to build on the identity. So, like, where he's been in the sign of Pisces, he's been encouraging you to, like, let go of all of your old belief systems, let go of your hidden fears, to create a sense of spiritual endings, so that your unconscious mind, your subconscious, can go into a deep state of healing. And in that healing, there's a release, so that you can move into self-identified leadership, to embody all the kinds of confidences that come from knowing yourself. So I really see that what you're going through right now is the journey of what you're not anymore, and into the journey of who you're becoming. This is a really, really strong time for you. And if you can remember what was going on in 1996 for you, I wonder how you were recreating your life back then. If you can't remember that, maybe think about 2010, like summer 2010 to early spring 2011. During that time, you were being challenged to be fresh and new. And there is a similarity here. You're not being, like, challenged to be fresh and new, but you are being challenged to start over again. You are being challenged to take responsibility for the person that you're becoming. Like I say, this isn't all done in one day. Saturn is starting his relationship in Aries again, literally on the 25th of May. And then from the 14th of February, it really feels like things start to really take shape. It's almost as if you've been just completing on the self-sabotage and old insecurities and the old way that you were thinking about yourself, so that by the time you get to the 14th of February, you really are ready to go into that space of leadership. And you'll be exploring that space of leadership right the way through until the 13th of April, 2028, when he moves into the sign of Taurus. Now, what you might need to consider between February 2026 and April of 2028 is how you can build your confidence and your sense of leadership, and start to move forwards in your life in such a way that when Saturn comes through into the sign of Taurus in 2028, that you're ready to take responsibility for everything that you earn, for the way you are earning, for your sense of self-esteem. It really is encouraging you to come up in the world. It's encouraging you to start a whole new sort of financial story. So I would say that while he's going through the sign of Aries, it's really important for you to practice leadership and practice stepping into roles where your confidence is bubbling up. And in doing so, start to realize what your true value is and your true worth is, so that as Saturn eventually comes around to the sign of Taurus in 2028, you really are ready to take that sense of leadership into a whole new direction. So there you go. There's a quick overview. If you want a lot more detail, check out the first part of this video. I've explored lots of different parts of Saturn in Aries. I think it could be quite helpful. So anyway, have a great experience of Saturn in Aries. Remember, this is the playtime, and from the 14th of February, it starts to get real. Anyway, lots of love. Bye for now. Hey there, Taurus. So this is quite an exciting time because, the sign, like Saturn, has been going through the sign of Pisces and he's coming into Aries. Now, between the 25th of May and the 14th of February, it's a bit like an initiation, or you could say it's a bit like an apprenticeship. Like Saturn is apprenticing in the sign of Aries. So you've got this little bit, this window of leeway between, the end of May 2025 until Valentine's Day in 2026. And what's going on there is, Saturn over the last couple of years has been very, very busy building your social capital. There's been an understanding that, together you can actually, accrue a lot more, build a lot more. I imagine that your roles within communities, your networks, your friendships, and wider and wider and wider from your local community, I think you've got further and further out. This is a time when your influence has been raised up, and you've been putting your efforts into things that really mean something and really make a difference. I really feel that sense of social awareness and like a grander vision for what you would like to see in your community and even further afield, in the world. I think you've been really working hard at being a good egg. And during that time, you would have had some challenges because you may have come across some very serious people, very professional people, but very serious people that you may have felt a little bit insecure at times. So this has been quite a big placement. And now, where Saturn is moving to, he's encouraging you to let go of some of these positions. He's encouraging you to do a lot more of inner work. And you might need to step back from the socializing a little bit and to come back into yourself. See, this area that Saturn is coming into is a place where we can reprogram the mind, and where we can come into a sense of reassessment. And, from that place of reassessment, we can also start to discern what has been working for us and what hasn't. Where Saturn is coming into, literally from the 25th of May, and again on the 14th of February, that's when it really starts to kick in, is, this is an opportunity for you to really discern whether you're still on the same path that you were on just moments ago. That sort of community active way of being, seeing a much bigger global vision. Have you completed on that now? Or are you ready to start something new? And my sense is, with Saturn and also recently Neptune moving out of this area, it really is a time to come back and nourish yourself. In the role that Saturn's been playing, you'd have been doing a lot of stuff outside of yourself, very much in a sort of like giving role, in a giving capacity, and it can be exhausting. And so, what's really represented here is a coming back into you. And anywhere where you can see programming, inner programming that's not really helping you, that maybe is a bit insecure or has a bit self-sabotage attached to it, this is your time. Saturn is here to help you work through it. Saturn in this position can actually be a mentor, but I really do think he needs to be tightly managed or else he can become a little bit of a dementor, like from Harry Potter. It's really important to work with your emotions, and when you start to feel something, allow it to come through, like feel it fully so you can release it. This is not a time to harbor things inwardly and not give them a chance to come out. So anywhere where you can be your own coach, your own goal, your own mentor, anywhere where you can find someone that you trust and work with them, I think would be really good. A discipline such as meditation or journaling, or, I quite like tapping or hypnosis or timeline therapy, whatever works for you, start doing it. Anywhere where you can nourish yourself internally is going to set you up. See where this is going. From the 14th of February, when he comes into the sign of Aries, he's going to be there until April of 2028. And when he comes into your own sign in the first house, there's going to be a real big change. You're going to be really letting go of the old stories and starting to step into your own leadership in a much more holistic and grounded way. And so this is a real kind of it's almost like an interval between two acts. If you're at a play, you've just been completing act one in your story of responsibility, and now is the time to have the refreshment. This is the interval, and yeah, it's a 2.5-year interval. So you can go really far and wide with this. So anywhere where you can come in to do inner work and take spiritual responsibility, that's the real key here for you, and that's where the real gift is. So I'm going to leave that there, Taurus. I hope that's helpful for you as you welcome Saturn into the sign of Aries. Lots and lots of love. Hey there, Gemini. So Saturn is coming into the sign of Aries, and this is a big position. It's going to be there for 2.5 years. And what's quite impressive, I think, about this is he's coming in on the 25th of May. But he's not completely committed to Aries until the 14th of February, 2026. So what I really see going on for you now between the end of May and Valentine's Day on 2026 is that we've got this experimental, this like place to try out different forms of being responsible. Now, this is interesting because from September, Saturn will go back into the sign of Pisces, which is where he's been since 2023. And during that time, you've been working on a sense of responsibility in terms of your career, in terms of how you are in public. Like, if we had an echo that everyone could hear, like, if the energy of us was repeating around your community, around your home, around your town and stuff, what would your echo be? Is it one of responsibility? Where have you mastered your career? And are you really aligned to matters of the soul? Because this place where Saturn has been is a place where we stand in the world and we really show who we are, and who we're becoming and where our destiny and legacy is. And so that's what you've been working on. But there's a new side to this that's coming out when Saturn goes into Aries. So like I said, from the 25th of May, he's really coming into this part, which is about collaboration and creating a vision with other people. So I guess where I'm going here is the journey you've been on recently has helped you to define how you want to stand in the world and to define your vision and to use a lot of discipline to be able to create that. But the next step is to take it outwards and to take responsibility for your ideas, and also to share them with your community, with your networks, with the friends of friends, and so on and so forth. Lots of business networks. Also, it's quite a philanthropic place. So you may well find that some of your lasting legacy is actually a gift to the world or a gift to your community. So I really see that, until February of next year, like Valentine's Day in particular, that you'll be practicing this. You'll be flirting with these ideas a little bit. Going in and out, you might have that sense of, this is what I would like to do philanthropically, and you'll get a chance to meet and expand those ideas with other people, and then come back into yourself again, and to see if it still feels right. Now, Saturn here is asking you to take responsibility. So any ideas that you come up with, or this strong feeling, your soul alignment, it's time to listen up. Where we don't listen, Saturn kicks our butt. He really does. Like, I think the way Saturn is, he's like giving you this opportunity. He's saying, look what I'm here to support you with. And if you hear his call, and you're disciplined, he will lift you up. He will help you. It won't be easy. He will make you work hard, but he will help you to lift this up. And this is such a prominent position to have Saturn going from the 10th to the 11th. I really see that your ideas are about to fly. Now, the one thing about this, when it comes into Aries, Saturn comes into Aries on Valentine's Day 2026, it's going to be there until mid-April of 2028. And so you've got a good 2.5 years or 2 years or so, just over that, to really work on the collaborative aspect, and really work on the delegation, and really work on taking responsibility for an idea. Now, in this time, you can really come into a higher level of influence. So this could be a massive, massive step for you, Gemini. Ultimately, as you're coming into April of 2028, Saturn will be lining up and preparing to go into the 12th house. Now, that will be a time when you're really wrapping up all of the old patterns, all the old projects. It's almost like you need a bit of an interval before you start something else that's even bigger than this one. So yeah, the way things are going, I would say this is for your continual upliftment. So heed the call from Saturn, work with him, because this is an opportunity for you to build something really quite lasting. So I hope that's helpful for you, Gemini. I really, truly do. And sending you lots and lots of love. Bye for now. Hey there, Cancer. So this is an interesting one. Saturn, he's the ruler of Capricorn. In fact, Saturn's not happy in your sign, so you're not exactly on great terms already, but Saturn is a planet that absolutely is encouraging you to step out of your emotional sense and your emotional self, and to come into a deeper sense of taking action, practical action, and learning something about your emotional maturity. So what I want to pace you through right now is where you are in terms of Saturn's position. He's going in between the sign of Pisces and Aries. On the 25th, he's going into the sign of Aries, which is highlighting this very important part of your chart. This is the part of your chart really associated with your greatness and your legacy and destiny, and the direction you're going in. Now, as you can see, on the 1st of September, he pops back into Pisces, and then he doesn't completely go into Aries until Valentine's Day of 2026. So between now and 2026, there's this interesting dual focus between Saturn. So you're getting the chance to end what's happened here and start here, but then revisit and recalibrate. I think this is quite useful. So what I want to do is talk through where you've been with Saturn and what he's been teaching you in this part of your chart, and how that is adding into this very important part of your chart to do with your legacy, your destiny, your direction. Yeah, and I wonder what was going on. If you can remember what was going on back in 1996, during that time, that would have been the last time that Saturn came into this part of your chart. Or if you can remember what was going on around mid 2010 into early spring of 2011, that would have been a time when something very fast and exciting was going on to uplift you. Now, this isn't necessarily meant to be fast. This one is meant to be a slow, thorough, discerning movement into your career, and a movement to lift you up. It's not to be rushed, but it is to be savored. It's not to be kind of consumed very quickly and then cast away like a takeaway. It's meant to be like a fine wine. So this is a really important journey for you. And so how I see it coming in is, where Saturn's been since 2023, he's been enhancing the part of your chart to do with your belief systems, your spiritual questing, and that sense of you that wanted to grow philosophically. It's given you much more of a curiosity. You may well have been accomplished in learning. You might have studied quite hard or traveled, but there's been a seriousness, almost like there was a desire to acquire a greater learning and a greater depth and a greater context. This has put you in a much better position, by the way, because it's broadened your knowledge and it's given you a lot more a much greater depth, so you can understand things at a much deeper level. Now, this is going to help you as Saturn comes into your 10th house, because you've got so much more to offer. You're not the same person you were back in 2020, 2022, and so on and so forth. From 2023 came this insatiable, or actually not insatiable because Saturn's quite slow moving, but this desire to work and be consistent, and to examine your beliefs, and to read up about things, and to examine what it is to be in the world, with different cultures, different religions, different this, that, and the other. This is a time when diversity and the understanding that we are all sharing this place, this has become a lot more serious, so I really do think your ability to see what you might need in your career is altered, but made better because of it, of this recent experience. So where you're coming to now is into a position of greater leadership, a maturity in life, where you can take on a much more visible responsibility. And it can really show where you're leading things in terms of public. So I don't know where you are in your life, whether you got your own business, whether you work for somebody or about to work for somebody, or you might be retiring, but however you've got it right now, this is the cue. This is like the alarm bell saying it's time to step up and step out. This is a really sort of public place for Saturn to be in. Maybe you've learned something over the last few years that now makes you want to take action and help more people understand something. This is where you'll be taking a lot more responsibility for what you know and how that can help people. So there's a really strong practical application going on here. From Valentine's Day 2026, you've then got a good couple of years before Saturn will be going into the 11th house. And when that happens, whatever you've been working on right now will become a lot more philanthropic, and it will need a lot more of a community leadership, and an energy of how you can share even further, and maybe even share your idea so other people start doing it. Almost like if you had a business right now, in 2 years' time, you might have a few different areas doing what you do. So like franchises, for instance. But what I really see going on right now is this is your opportunity to practice the call for leadership, the call to be responsible about your unique niche, the area that you know most about, and what you've been working so hard to understand. Now is your time to find yourself in the direction and to work towards the destiny that you've wanted for so long. So yeah, this is important. Well, one last thing I would say to you, Cancer, is when Saturn comes calling, it's important to listen, because where you don't listen, it can sometimes show up as, in particular in this part of the chart, it can show up as problems with authority. So like a Saturn figure, and Saturn figures are authoritarian. A Saturn figure may come into your world because you're not stepping up. So step up and believe in yourself. It is time for you to find that inner leader and allow that to drive you forwards. So I hope that's helpful for you. Like I said, this is Saturn. It's slow moving. It's not all going to come out in one day, but you are definitely moving towards much bigger things. So I hope you enjoy using that Saturn energy, and take care. Have a wonderful time with this. Hey Leo, so we've got Saturn going into the sign of Aries on the 25th of May. And this is starting a bit of a transition period from Saturn being in the sign of Pisces, going to the sign of Aries. And what you'll see is he's going to retrograde back into Pisces on the 1st of September, and then move finally for the last time into Aries on Valentine's Day of 2026. So between now and Valentine's Day of 2026, there's this energy of transition. Saturn is moving his area of influence and asking you to step up into this sphere of activity. So you are going through quite a deep transition. So what I want to pace through now is how you can start understanding that, and understanding what you might need to complete on in this area here, that will really help you as the permanent change comes in on the 14th of February. This is big. He's going to be here until the 13th of April in 2028. So if you think we're in 2025 right now, and he'll be there permanently from Valentine's Day 2026. There's a good couple of years here. And when he comes into here in 2028, he's going to be in one of the most prominent parts of the chart. So I really want to pace this out so that you can start planning appropriately. Like Saturn loves people to plan. Saturn is encouraging you to step up and to step into something much grander, a much grander view of who you are right now, or who you believe yourself to be. So where he's been for the last couple of years, since March 2023, so it's quite a while, he's been encouraging you to face your demons. The 8th house is a place where there's where you're really encouraged to take the next step and the next step and the next step. It's a place of transition, and you need a lot of courage to be able to get through it. So there has been this need to expand and expand beyond the emotional depths, with the transformations you're going through. There's a lot of boundary work because, when you are going through one stage of life and moving into the next, each of these stages of lives have resistances, and let me give you an example. So for instance, like you got birth, you become like a toddler, a child, a prepubescent child, a pubescent child, an adult. You might fall in love, you might have a job or a child, and a house, and all these different things. Each one of these stages needs a lot of courage to get through to the next part. And at this part of your life, you're usually doing these things with other people. So you're going through these stages with other people. And so we often get caught in the emotional debacle as we're expanding, and wanting to go to the next stage. We need to be really brave. We need to be able to face ourselves. And we really need to trust ourselves as we go through this transformation. You often find people here can be quite disagreeable. They really kind of push you back. You might find out how you failed their expectations. People can be very judgmental when Saturn is in this part of your chart. So it really does give you quite a strong workout for sure. And it really works at a deep emotional level. Now, anywhere where there's still some resistance about moving forwards into the stage of life you're meant to be at right now, it's important to complete on that, I think, because the next step is to expand into something completely new. This part of your chart is actually quite wild and quite exciting. There's a lot of new belief systems, a lot of new places to see, a lot of cultures. It's definitely a place of deep learning and expansive learning. And it really shows you where your belief systems will be changing quite considerably, your spirituality, your religion, your politics, and all that jazz. In fact, you might be moving beyond all of that, because that would be an ultimate expansion. It really does get you to think more about the truth, but we're talking about Saturn here as well. So it's the responsibility of truth, the responsibility of your spiritual belief systems, and the responsibility of maybe sharing the message as well. I mean, the ninth house has a lot to do with broadcasting and sharing and teaching, and becoming a mentor yourself. So here's how I see these working together. Like your recent experiences of Saturn in Pisces, they've been an absolute emotional workout, but you've learned a lot along the way. It might have hurt. You might have cried many tears. You may have lost some battles, but it has made you more humble and a lot more able to see lots of different points of view. And of course, that's what you need as Saturn comes in here, which is multiple points of view. And so, yes, I think the time is right for you to go into a much braver, more excited, more bolder version of you and a vision of you. Now, where is this leading? This is going to be in the sign of Aries until the 13th of April, 2028. And then Saturn is going to come to this top spot in your chart. Now, that top spot in your chart could be the culmination of your career. It could show where your career has moved so far that you're ready for the next big push. This is a place where you come into a real position of leadership, and you might want to do it publicly. You might just be at the top of your game, in terms of your work and stuff. And anywhere where you've not really worked hard towards it, I think Saturn, when he comes up here, he can really push you back. He gives you a challenge. Wherever you are, he's always giving you a challenge. Are you ready to step into this or not? So, yeah, what I really see here is the next couple of years are going to be a blast. You are going to be asked and tasked to learn deeply and to explore broadly and bravely, and to really expand your vision as much as you can, because the next step of going into such a strong leadership, I think, needs the broadness and the expanded mind. I think you're coming into a cycle of wisdom, and like from emotional trauma to expanding through the trauma to teaching and sharing and mentoring and leading the way beyond that. So this is a huge, huge shift for you, Leo. I'm really excited for you. Enjoy it. Like I said, this is dancing around between May and February of next year. So you've got this time to refine it. So anywhere where you feel resistance and you feel like I'm not ready for that next step, and you're finding lots of ways to be irresponsible with it, that the moment you feel like not turning up, not showing up, or blowing something off, that's your key. That's your reminder that you're not attending to your inner Saturn, and he will give you a real big butt kick. So watch out for that. So anyway, have a great one with this, Leo, and take care, and catch you another time. Bye for now. Hey Virgo, so Saturn is going into Aries on the 25th of May. And what I want to do in this short video, this short forecast for you, is to pace you through the changes he's going through, because he's coming into Aries from Pisces on the 25th, but only for a short while before he heads back into Pisces. And then he comes in here on the 14th of February next year, so Valentine's Day next year. And he's going to be there for 2 years. And so, you know, this is really an introduction to him. You know, you're still dancing between the Aries and Pisces thing. What this means to me is you're stepping forwards to know what you've forgotten to do. You know, a bit like when you're about to go out shopping, or no, you're about to go on holiday and you've packed everything, you've got everything organized, you're getting into the car, you're driving off, and then you realize you haven't like watered the plants or done something, like left the cat food out for the person that's going to feed your cats, and you've got to come back. So this is, you're moving forwards, you're moving into this new Saturn position, but there's something left to go back and review. So this is an interesting dance. You can't actually complete here until you've moved forwards. You can't see what you've forgotten until you can feel that energy of what you've forgotten. So yeah. Anyway, where Saturn has been over the last couple of years, since March 2023, is he's been in the sign of Pisces, really working on your 7th house. And the 7th house is all about relationships and connections with the people that you love, and commitment. And of course, Saturn coming into this sign is really showing you or teaching you how to step into relationship maturity, to have compassion with your commitment, and also to set boundaries with the people in your life, because they can be, you know, interestingly, Saturn can also show where people get judgmental. And so you may have found that your partner has been judgmental over the last couple of years, which has forced you to set some boundaries and to understand it. I always think the 7th house is what we're projecting onto people as well, what we're maybe not able to see in ourselves. So maybe you have been needing a much greater commitment, and maybe you haven't been quite so romantic and, you know, full of hearts and flowers. Maybe it has been more about getting security together, and you know, it almost maybe has been unromantic but a lot more fulfilled. So what's happening now is you're moving into another stage in terms of your relationship, and it's going into a time of even deeper trust. This part of the chart here is about our shared values and our shared assets, our shared resources. And it's also about how we move beyond, you know, how we mature even like even further away, actually how we get even deeper into our relationships. Because what happens often, especially after a couple of years, you start to go deeper and deeper, and you start to come up against other people's expectations, and failed expectations, parts of your past, in terms of your childhood. In particular, Saturn does represent the parents. So parental issues can come in, and they can start to affect your relationship, and affect how you share. Now, as Saturn is coming into here, he's really teaching you to trust yourself and to trust the people that you are living with, and to come into a better trusting relationship between each of you. But it can be a really traumatic place. So it might take a while for you to get to that moment of trust. So the first thing that occurs to me is, how ready are you and your partner, if you have a partner, how ready are you to have deeper conversations where you can talk about the things that trigger you without taking it personally? And I think the world has had a masterclass. I'd like to say masterclass, but I think we've all been thrown into a world of triggering and getting upset and being offended by people for really quite a long time. I really think the time of the COVID phenomenon really brought in a new sense of like triggering conversations. And so, yeah, how open and ready are you to have deeper conversations with people and to handle the fallout that might happen from having these deeper conversations? Of course, it's very okay to just stay on the surface, and lots of people can stay on the surface for many years, but to get that deeper promise within your relationship and to go even deeper into the trust, you have to get to the real foundations, get into the roots, go much deeper than you've gone before. So this isn't a comfortable position. It can be quite exhausting, I'll be honest. And I think the more you try to hide from Saturn going through this part of your chart, the more likely it is that other people's judgments of you and other people who are being authoritative and judgmental of you, the more they're likely to come up. The moment you start to take responsibility for your emotions and you have the courage to share your emotions deeply and to stand by for any fallout that comes from it, the more quickly you'll move through this. So this could actually be a time when you come into emotional mastery with your partner, and also a financial mastery with your partner, because this is about the deepening perspective, and trusting, like that if somebody is bringing in half of the money, that they're going to do it. So yeah, this is an interesting journey for sure. It's not for the faint-hearted. Now, I do want to say that, Saturn is going to be in the sign of Aries for 2 years. And so from April 2028, he's going to go into the 9th house. Now, that is when life gets infinitely much easier. There's a much bigger world out there. And I think as Saturn moves out of the 8th, you'll feel this sense of relief, and you'll be ready to have adventures with your partner, or much deeper, more fun adventures into, I guess just exploring the world in a much different way. Here, Saturn is giving you a mastery for understanding the world and feeling a much greater sense of liberation. So it's like all of your hard work gets paid off, really, truly. So yes, this is an intense time for you with Saturn going into the sign of Aries, but you've got this. You totally have got this. And the true result of this is leading you to a much greater sense of liberation. So I hope that's helpful for you, Virgo, really, truly. And yeah, sending you loads and loads of love, because this, as Saturn goes through all of these houses, he's actually, where it is right now, he's on the ascent to the 10th house. So you are actually growing in responsibility, but that growth in the responsibility that you're getting is taking you to a much bigger place of stature in your world. So this is all leading you in a really, really good destination. And a bit like, if you take the tube to go from one part of London or New York or wherever to another, you have loads of different stops on the way. And so this is just the stop where you're facing yourself a lot more. But again, this too will pass. So anyway, loads of love to you, Virgo. Take care and catch you another time. Lots of love. Hey there, Libra. So this is a forecast to talk about the impact that Saturn in Aries is going to be having for the duration, which is taking us until the 13th of April 2028. Now, he's not in Aries the whole of this time. In fact, he is taking another dip back into Pisces. So that's where I really want to start the story. So in this short forecast, what I'm going to be doing is talking about what Saturn leaving Pisces is going to do, i.e., is it going to enhance a particular area of your life where he has been kind of really taking you to task on things, and then where the new focus is, and where you might need to pull yourself up a little bit and be a little bit more accountable, because Saturn is all about responsibility, and now he's going into the sign of Aries. Everything is going to be a lot more obvious about the responsibilities we need to take. It's going to be very difficult to hide in the mess of things. So anyway, where he's coming from. So Saturn has been transiting through the sign of Pisces since 2023. That was March 2023. And this is, I think, sorry, it's my opinion. It's a kind of almost unmagical part of your chart. It's a chart of your absolute reality in the stories you're creating about your life. It really does govern all aspects of your life, in particular the routine and the habits and how you look after yourself, your health and well-being, etc. And are you managing your money properly? Are you managing your work properly? And so on and so forth. So he's come from a very functional place, and actually Saturn does really well in this part of your chart, even though he's in the sign of Pisces, which is actually a little bit chaotic. The sign of Pisces isn't known for being completely organized, and really well organized, in fact. So, over the last couple of years, he's been giving you such a hard push to get your life looking a lot more regular, a lot more fit for purpose. And the way I see it is, he has been challenging you to get fit for purpose because he's now coming into this area of relationships. And I think when our life is a lot smoother, it creates more space for us to enjoy our relationships. Now, Saturn coming into the 7th house can be seen a bit like, if you take your car to the mechanics, they go, oh, it's going to cost you. And the thing is, Saturn doesn't need to cost you in the 7th house. He is sensible, practical. Maybe he's not very romantic. He's much more after a mature and a lot more responsibility in relationships. So perfect for a mature partnership. So what you might find if you're in an existing relationship during this time, you might find that your relationship maybe gets a bit practical, a little less romantic, but a lot more responsible. So again, it's not, throw your knickers at someone on the stage, like someone doing a pop concert and you're like, oh, I feel a flush of love or whatever. This is very, very practical and very functional. Now, you might also find that your existing partner appears a lot more practical, a lot more sensible, and possibly a lot older. The 7th house shows us how we are viewing the people in our lives. So you might find that, you may well experience that your partner seems a little bit, I don't want to say depressed, but a little bit maybe not as effusive with the happiness and effusive with the love. And again, that's not necessarily a reflection on you. It's not necessarily a reflection that they don't love you. It's just that they are in more of a serious frame of mind. This can also be a really good time for a commitment. This isn't just about your partner. I notice when I have planets going through this part of my chart, it enhances the kinds of clients I have, the people that I'm working with in my business. And so, if you are noticing that you've got lots of clients, you might find that your clients are a little bit more serious and possibly they're coming from an older generation or have concerns of an older nature. So it's kind of interesting. So you may well decide that, in your business, if that's how you're looking at this from that perspective of, you might decide that you want to tailor what it is that you offer for people who are a little bit more practical, wanting a lot more security and wanting a lot more realism and proof and evidence. So this can be a little bit weighty. Now, if you are single, this Saturn transit could in fact bring somebody serious into your life, whereby someone is really taking you seriously, sees you as a valuable partner that they want to commit to. So again, it's not all bad, but I have to say it's not deeply romantic unless you find someone really, really committing in a beautiful and deep and practical way, really romantic, which I have to say, when I've had Saturn aspects going through this part of my chart, I have found, the energy actually quite helpful. Now, if you are in a relationship and for a long time have been feeling that maybe you're in the wrong relationship, Saturn can come in and really kick you up the bum, because anywhere where you're not facing things, Saturn is going to want you to get very real. And that's the message I'm carrying out to everybody who's reading their or listening to their forecasts. Anywhere where we're ignoring that aspect or ignoring the truth and the relevancy, Saturn will kick your butt a little bit. So, if there are conversations you need to be having with your partners, or if you've fallen out of love, or if something else has happened and you haven't quite cleared up any mess, Saturn is going to come in here and expect you to take responsibility. Now, this is the other thing. Saturn in Aries is deeply responsible and is a bit of a leader. This is about you creating a relationship sovereignty and being a lot stronger as a partner. So it's an interesting time. And like I said, it's going from Pisces from the 6th into the 7th. And from your perspective, it's like, if you've cleared your life up and made it really functional, then it's going to create space for you to have a much richer and deeper relationship experience. So it's not all hearts and flowers, but it could actually take you into a much deeper and more satisfying mode of relating to others. Now, interestingly, the next step when it moves into Taurus in 2028, that's going to be taking you into a deepening trust with your partner. So the more you can do at this time to really clear up any mistakes as they occur, clear up any misunderstandings as they occur, and to develop a kind of communication whereby, you know, you can maybe have a disagreement, but still trust each other to work things out. That would be very, very helpful, because when Saturn comes into the 8th, we're going into the deep, 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 deep inner psychology of you and your partner. So there you go. That's Saturn's influence as he moves through that. I hope that's helpful to you, Libra, and wishing you so much luck and love. So Scorpio, let's have a look at where Saturn might be impacting you in your life. So to do this, I'm going to be talking about Saturn in Pisces and Saturn in Aries, because between now, the 25th of May, and the 14th of February, 2026, Saturn is in Aries, but takes one of those little deep dives back into Pisces and then moves forwards again. All the dates are here. And he will be in Aries until the 13th of April, 2028, when he goes into the sign of Taurus. So yeah, we are reflecting on what you've already learnt during the Saturn in Pisces times from March 2023 to now. And also looking at, where this is going to be moving you, because Saturn is a really serious character, and, you'll find so much more in the earlier parts of this reading. Saturn is serious. Saturn does definitely want to be taken seriously, and, he's no joking. But, where he has been in your chart is he's been going through that part of your chart to do with creative self-worth and vulnerability, a lot more about how you can feel joyful in what you do, and a lot more about your expression, and how to be more measured and actually do more with your expression. So I think you've learned quite a lot. And if you've been really open to your creativity, it's probably taken you to quite a few new places and probably brought in a lot of extra work or a lot of extra interest. And so as he goes into the 6th house, he's really asking you to get very grounded in discipline, to be really grounded about your health. Most likely you're starting to feel that your health needs a bit of a pick-me-up. And he's really wanting you to use your energy in a very structured way. This part of your chart, which is the Aries part of your chart, is all about how you're functioning in life. Do you have useful routines and habits that help you to stay in tip-top condition, really fast and competitive? It's Aries after all. And are you really winning it at work? Are you uncomplicated? Are you decluttered? And Saturn will be a little ruthless in this part of your chart, because anywhere where you haven't paid attention, he's going to really, really shine the light. And by the light, I mean, that makes it sound all beautiful and happy, but he's going to really kind of put a laser light on those things that you've left by the side. Now, the thing is, where he's been going through your 5th house, he might have brought in a lot more interest and a lot more joy and a lot more opportunities from you following your joy. And I should say the 5th house isn't just about creativity, it's also about children and also about new relationships. So for instance, if you've got a new child, or if you've been doing a lot with your children and their creativity is also coming to this, you might find now, as he goes into the sign of Aries, you've got so much more work to do, and that maybe the work you are doing is not actually where you need to put your focus. Maybe your hobby is going to take over as your work, or maybe your children's circumstances are so great that their needs are coming before you. So I really see Saturn coming into the 6th is a bit of a balancing act. If during this time you met somebody, which is also another thing that can happen when a big, long, slow moving planet moves through your 5th house. Certainly happened. That's when I met my husband and had my first child, when Uranus and Jupiter conjuncted right at the start of this. So it can really change things. So you may be in a new relationship. You might find that as your relationship is progressing, it's, like with your stuff and their stuff and the big mix of it, as Saturn is coming into the 6th house, it's time now to normalize, get better habits and habits and routines, and to really measure the results. Saturn isn't wanting you to be fast with this. He is wanting you to take time to really consider why you're doing what you're doing. Like, are your routines fit for purpose? Can you shave a bit of time off here, and can you make it more effective here? So he is going to tempt you to make some radical changes to make your life flow a lot more smoothly. Now, my big warning here is, and I don't like to give warnings because I think that sounds really fatalistic, but this is one part of the chart that, when Saturn comes around and he starts to, like I always find that Saturn tightens things up. I've just had him going through my fourth house. He's kind of tightened up my look on my home and everything. And your resources, if you haven't got like masses of savings and things like that, you might run out of money at home. Saturn can show where things get a bit tighter and you don't have as much energy. So when he's coming into this is, I think, like the control room of your life. It does manage the money coming in and out. It does manage your work. It does manage your health. So if you know that there's a problem or something that you've not been completely straightforward about, Saturn could really bring that to the fore, so you can't ignore it anymore. And so my advice, straight away, is in this first flush of this, get as much as you can done. When he goes back into Pisces, he's really looking to see what you've left behind, what you've forgotten about. And then when he comes into Aries fully on the 14th of February, he really means business. So do as much of that stuff as you can before February. Another reason why, on the 20th of February, Saturn will be in an exact conjunction with Neptune at this point. That is absolutely a point when you really do want to make sure that everything that is mucky, not clean, not straightforward, not working for your greatest good, anything that you're almost ashamed about or worried about, you need to get it cleared up. So I think this is almost like taking a laxative, but like one of those psyllium husk ones that's going to absolutely give your intestinal digestive tract a really, really good cleanse. It's going to go right the way through you. Look for all those hidden little areas, those pockets of muck, and it's going to come out and freshen you up. So it's going to freshen up your whole life. So Saturn here is really working for you. And if you are happy to go with it and to work with him, this will really set you up for something good. Finally, when he does move into Taurus on the 13th of April, you've created space in your life. And when he's in this part of your chart, this is when a serious partner could come in, when your commitment to your partner can go to a whole deeper level. The spotlight will be on your partnerships. So really, this is foundational. This is about you getting your life right. So you've got much more time to have a quality relationship as it comes in, and gets stronger when he goes into Taurus. So I hope that's helpful for you, Scorpio. Loads and loads of love to you in this time. It might not seem that fun, but this is so effective. So anyway, loads of love to you. Bye for now. Sagittarius, how are you doing? So this is the Saturn going into the sign of Aries. That's what I'm going to be talking about. And of course, Aries is a fellow fire sign. So I always think that, when these big heavy planets are in a fellow element to the main element that you are, I think that's, there's an energy that you can understand. Now, what I'm going to do is look at this potential move, or not potential move, but the transition that's going on. Saturn's been in Pisces since March 2023, and he's moving into Aries on the 25th of May, but not fully until the 14th of February next year, Valentine's Day 2026. So he is doing a little shuffle. He's changing back into Pisces on the 1st of September. So he's transitioning from one to the other. And this is a time when there's a little bit of wiggle room, I would say. So what I want to do is talk about what he's leaving behind and where you might be released from. And I have to say, I'm in this boat. Saturn has just been going through my fourth house and he's about to go into my fifth. So let's have a look at this. So when Saturn has been going through your fourth, he's been really looking at, I would say, inner safety and your feelings of security. Like the fourth house is that, the bottom of your chart is where you have your stability and it's where you've got your roots. And so anywhere where you haven't really paid attention to your roots, Saturn will have got underneath those. It can be quite a low energy time. This is the second time Saturn's gone through this part of my chart. And each time I've noticed that I've got out of energy, I've got ill, I've had all sorts of little problems sort of impacting my energy levels. And you may well have found that. It can also show where money gets a bit tight and your anxiety about money and your security in your home and in your family, and the emotional healing that goes on in your family really becomes, a big issue. Where he's going to, hurrah, is into the 5th house. And this is where everything that you do that is creative, you're going to need to take a little bit more responsibility with. Now, that can be pretty drastic, but it can also be quite liberating. So let me explain a little bit. So the 5th house is that place where we can express ourselves. It's a place, I think, of innocence and joy, so whatever is at the heart of you, like that core of you, that you're really, really passionate about. For me, it's astrology and healing, and feeling free. So for me, like, my whole passion is, how can I feel free? So what is your passion is my first question. Like, so anything you're really passionate about that really lifts you up, you're going to be a lot more serious about it. So anywhere where you've created little bits here and there, or you've indulged in your hobby but haven't really taken it anywhere, as Saturn comes in here. So for instance, if you're somebody who wants to have a YouTube channel or a home business, this is actually your time. This is a perfect time for you to be really serious about what it is you want to create. Similarly, if you're wanting to create a child, like, children are a 5th house phenomenon. They are what we grow in our womb, which is obviously the ultimate act of love. I mean, it's like you are creating from your love. So birthing becomes a really, really big issue. And so, for instance, if you've had birthing issues, those issues can feel a little bit serious. If you're trying for a baby, again, this can sometimes make things feel a little restricted. However, usually with Saturn going through these parts of the chart, it shows you what's not working, but it also shows you how discipline can really assist you. How you can take it to the next level. I mean, Saturn is a commitment as well. So I think this could be quite helpful. There might just be a few things that you need to be working on. So yeah, I see that everything to do with your creativity and what lifts you up, what's going to be lifting you up in love and helping you to express yourself fully, you're going to be getting serious about. And so it probably is going to require a little bit of hard work. Now, this is also a place where we might meet a partner, and where we might be quite sensuous and sexual and enjoy the feelings in our body, because again, that can bring us that joy, that feeling of ecstasy. So again, you may well be serious about dating if you're single, serious about your sensuousness, and wanting to explore that. So you might find like different massage disciplines, or I don't know, there's all sorts of different things to enhance your experience. But what I'm really seeing is you could become the student, you could become somebody who studies and gets involved and gets real hands-on experience, because again, Saturn is deeply practical. Whatever Saturn is doing here, he is absolutely trying to help you make the most of the things that you are passionate about. So another thing, like if you're a parent and you haven't been that responsible with your children, like if there's some things that you haven't done, which you need to do, for instance, I know we haven't got passports for our kids at the moment, and I'm saying that quite like I'm a bit ashamed I haven't done it. Like they've come out of their date. So yeah, that's the first thing I'm going to be getting sorted on. So this is a time to get everything. If they need shoes, if they need new clothes, whatever it is, if they need to go, I don't know. There's all sorts of different things that can go on with your children during this time, where you might need to up your game a little bit, or just pay a bit more attention, be a bit more disciplined. So out of all of these different Saturn movements, I would say this is one of the better ones, because he's not stopping you from doing what you love, he's enhancing it. But everywhere he goes does involve a certain amount of effort. So if you're not going to put the effort in, you're probably not going to get the results. But if you are ready to put the effort in, his serious focus is really going to help you. So yeah, this is one of those or one of those transits that I would encourage you to be at peace with and to enjoy. If you're listening to that sort of practical voice, if you're sort of listening to the Saturn message, and you're following his ideas, or following what feels sensible and practical, things will work out. Saturn, he is harshest on the people who aren't involved and not putting any effort in. So I hope that's helpful. Finally, my final point is, eventually he is going to go into the 6th house, where things need to get tidied up. This is a very, very practical house that's coming in 13th of April 2028 when it goes into Taurus. So often what does happen when things go through the 5th house is we bring so much more into our world because we're following our joy. And so the natural progression when it goes into Taurus, when Saturn goes into Taurus in 2028, is you've got to tidy things up to have a much smoother flow. So I really also think you're creating masses and masses and masses of opportunities for yourself. So anyway, lots and lots of love to you, Saji. Have a fantastic Saturn in Aries transit. And yeah, enjoy how he's going to lift you up and take yourself and your talents a lot more seriously. Lots of love. Hey Capricorn. So this is a short forecast about Saturn going into the sign of Aries. Now, Saturn is your ruling planet. So you've got a real affinity to Saturn. So the first thing I want to really share with you is this move makes a difference. Everything that Saturn does will have a much stronger significance to you because he is your ruling planet. He's very, very important. Now, he's moving into Aries on the 25th of May. However, he is going to go back into Pisces in September before finally going into Aries on Valentine's Day 2026 for the full duration of his time in Aries. So this forecast is talking about the moving from Saturn in Pisces in your 3rd house into transitioning fully into Saturn in Aries in your 4th house. This is a big one. Now, the 4th house that he's coming into is also one of the angular houses. So the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th, they're the most important houses. These are the ones that really drive our life. And so the 4th is about your home, your family, and your grounding and your stability. So this is a real core position for Saturn to come into. Now, funnily enough, I've just had Saturn going through my 4th house. So when I talk about this a little bit later, I'm really talking from my very, very recent and direct experience. So anyway, let me put some context in. So Saturn has been going through the sign of Pisces in the 3rd house. And this is one... Saturn has a sort of boundary effect, and he's very serious, and he has a slightly limiting effect. Really what he wants is discernment. He's always helping you get more discernment, a lot more practical, a lot more steady, a lot more stable, and also to build wealth as well. Saturn is a god of wealth for sure. But in the 3rd house, which is all about your communications, your community, your friendships, and how you are relating to people, he's really showing like this kind of these mental boundaries where maybe you haven't always felt as free to be in communication. There might have been some very purposeful feelings of restriction. So you may have felt a little bit restrictive or sensitive to the perception that people around you have had. There may well have been quite a few older people interacting with you during this time because Saturn is an elder. So you may well have found that people in your life that you felt restricted by were some of these Saturnian types, these older people, and possibly judgmental people, because Saturn is known for judgment. What he will have done during this time, though, is to really get you clear on your communication and to get a really good sense of clarity that you can communicate what you're about and how you are within the community. Now, this is moving into the 4th house, which is about your grounding. I really think both of these houses have an affinity with belonging. They really are showing a sense of belonging, like you're belonging to the community and then belonging to the home. And so what we're going now is into a much deeper sense of belonging, but I think belonging to yourself. Now, this is a very sort of foundational part of the chart. And so, like how stable are you in your emotions? How stable are you in your body? How stable are you in your home? This is really looking at all of your foundations. And so this is a place where your emotions have to get grounded. And so anywhere where you're feeling pulled out of your center, Saturn will you'll probably have this feeling of discomfort. I can talk about this for sure, because I've felt that when I've come out of my center, when I'm not feeling grounded or at peace, it's really knocked me for six. It's really affected me. It's taken me a lot longer to get back in my game. So I think almost safeguarding your emotions is really important at this time. You probably don't want to be around people that are triggering. Maybe not around people that you feel are a little bit like an emotional vampire. You also probably want to make sure that you're with people who are nourishing and supporting, and also very respectful of your home space and your family. Respect is really important here, because this is where we put our heads down at the end of the night. It's our bed, it's our home, it's the unit that you identify with, the absolute core sense of belonging. So you may well have needed to get a lot more accountable in your family. When Saturn comes through this part of your chart, you may find that different parts of your family, different members, if you're not living with your parents, you may well find there's stuff going on with your parents. If you've got children that are grown up, you might find there's stuff going on with them, and they're all coming into your home. And so it's like, how do you get a lot more accountable between everyone? You may well have relationships from a long, long time ago that are coming back into your world, and you have to kind of sort it out and work out how it relates to you right now in this exact now moment. Now, of course, the home is here, and Saturn has a tightening feeling. So you may well also find that your resources that you used to live, like your money, your car, your electricity, your gas, and internet and power, and all these things that are really fundamental to your life going very, very smoothly, that everything gets a little bit tighter and tighter and tighter. You might also feel that you're outgrowing your home. And if you're prepared for this, and obviously Saturn is your ruling planet, so it's even more important, you might find that this is a time when you need to move, because you've outgrown your home, or it's a thing of the past, and you're ready for a new start, a more serious start, and one that goes a lot more, is working for your status, is working for a much more secure way of being. Saturn is typically really associated with the 10th house, which is in complete opposition to where it is right now. So everything you can do to still maintain that feeling of emotional status, I think, is really important. You may even find that you start working from home during this time too. So your inner strength is going to be tested a little bit more. And I would say during this time, it's a lot more important to look after your health, because without that, you really don't have anything. So look after your health, look after your wealth, are good little pointers. You might also find, because again, Saturn has a sobering effect, you might find that you're feeling kind of slightly cold, or slightly like calm, but almost blank, or almost kind of neutral. There's a lot of people have happy, a lot of people have sad. You might find that you're kind of in the middle, and you can't really get revved up. You can't, you're really trying to stay in that middle ground. And so that might feel a little bit depressing, but it might just be that you're being discerning and thoughtful. Also, the last thing I want to share is, during this time, you might not feel that social. You might want to hide a lot more at home, and feel it's not a time of get up and go, put it that way. However, what this is really doing, I think, this sort of journey from the 3rd to the 4th, this is really working on your core security. So when he comes into the sign of Taurus, which is in 2028, things are going to start to liven up. And the 5th is all about what's in your womb, what are you birthing right now? And I don't think you can really birth anything until you've got that sort of feeling of core stability. So this is really about you getting rooted, feeling calmer, feeling a lot more respectful of your life, respectful of your time, respectful of your emotions, and really, really accountable for it. So that as Saturn moves into this part, all of a sudden, your life starts to kind of be reborn. If we think about it this way, like the birth chart, this is right at the bottom of the chart. And so from here on in, Saturn is going to be making the climb up to the top of the tree, right up to the top of the chart, right up to the heavens. And so the other thing you can say is he's really, really brought you back down to earth. And from here on in, the journey is up. But make the most of this time to really get that core stability. And then his next rise up will be really good. So there you go, Capricorn. I hope that's helpful for you, and have a really good Saturn in Aries transit. Aquarius, how you doing? So this is Saturn going into Aries. Now, Saturn is one of your rulers, according to whether you're traditional or a modern day astrologer. I always consider Saturn as well as Uranus in these forecasts for you. So the Aquarian way of being, the Saturn side of the Aquarian personality is really, really important. You know, it's that part that you can be quite analytical, and calm, and look at facts, and almost take all the emotions out of things. So it's interesting. You know, Saturn has been going through your second house in the sign of Pisces, which is all about your ability to have financial savvy. And of course, the Pisces energy isn't necessarily, you know, tuned into the finances. So it would have been quite a challenge. Now Saturn is coming into this part of your chart, which is absolutely about how you start to express yourself and express your value in the community with your peers, your siblings, all of your neighbors. It's where you're getting active based on your value. So, you know, Saturn is going into Aries on the 25th of May. However, he's not making his permanent move into Aries until the 14th of February. So Valentine's Day next year in 2026. In between those times, he's going back into Pisces. So this is still a tentative move forwards. But, you know, I think this is really helping you to move from one to the other and to really get that set point right. So here's how it's looking. So if I just step back a minute to him going through Pisces and what the true value of that was, you know, Saturn going through the second house is always about how you can get a little bit more reliable with your money, and a little bit more serious about earning money, and also a feeling of self-worth. I think, you know, feelings of self-worth and self-confidence really do come from here, you know, and when Saturn comes in, he can knock our confidence a little bit, because Saturn is so sobering and so serious and practical, you know, so that energy can really dampen your enthusiasm. But what it really does is it's asking you to get very real about yourself, to really find what your true self-value is. And you might well have easily got confused. You know, in the sign of Pisces, you can drift from one way to another. I mean, it's so expanded and has no boundaries. And so Saturn has come into this part of your chart and say, you need to decide what your value is. No more messing around. Piss or get off the pot. I don't know if you know that phrase, but it's kind of like, it's time to take yourself seriously. So I think you've been going through this really since March of 2023, when Saturn came into the sign of Pisces. But now you should have a really good sense of what your true value is, or what your true value is currently, you know, and how prepared you are to work, how prepared you are to learn to work better, how prepared you are to make practical changes with your work. So it has been kind of moving you into getting a bit more practical about being of service, and to get your true value and your true worth out into the world. And so as he comes into Aries, he's really inviting you to take yourself seriously within the community, so that the community start to feel the strength of your self-worth. So people start to get a sense of who you are. Now, this part of the chart is also about belonging. I really do think it helps us to realize which tribe we belong to, which neighborhood we belong to. And it's also a place where we do a lot of deep learning. And so I really think, you know, Saturn in Aries, which is really about sort of leading the way and being very serious, and becoming a leader. I think he's going to help you to become a leader of something within your own life, within your own community, within your own world. So I wonder what that might be. You know, maybe you've learned something about yourself recently, and you realize that your true sense of self is this. And so you're going to be taking that into your community, because there is a sense of self-worth. There is this sense of, this is what I'm here to do. This is my purpose. So I think, you know, your communication is going to get a lot more empowered, because it's infused with that sense of, this is who I am. This is what I'm meant to do. This is why I'm here. There's also a sense of mental clarity, and your voice should get a lot more assertive. Now, one of the downsides of Saturn is, he can create some limitations, and Saturn can also represent older people. He is about time and longevity and things like that. So one thing you might want to be a little bit careful during this time is the older people in your world, or people who are a bit more traditional or a little bit more stuck in their ways. You might find that if there is a spanner in the works, it comes from people who are a little bit older and a little bit less ready to change. So you may well find that at the same time as you're feeling empowered and moved to assist, that there are some factions that are kind of stopping you from making those changes. As it always happens, a planet comes in and you get to see the positive and the negative of that particular energy field. So one thing I might consider is, if in your sense of purpose and value and being in your community and being quite serious about the people that you have relationships with around you, like whether they're siblings, neighbors, cousins, or people in your office, because that is a community. That's also a place where you belong. You might well decide to do things or use your superpowers to help some of the older people there. You might even deliver something towards those kinds of people who are a lot more steady, security based, etc., etc. You might have a solution for them. Or the solution that you might have that you want to share with the world is helping to create more structure. So I don't know, there's a lot of different ideas out there. As it goes, out of all the 12 signs, I would say this isn't one of the difficult ones. I would say this is one of the more easier ones. But a side note, when Saturn has moved through Aries, he'll go into the sign of Taurus on the 13th of April. And this is a really major position. And during this time, you'll be a lot more serious about your home and also your boundaries and your time and your health. So my last thing that I would suggest is that whatever you're doing at a local level, with your friends, with your neighbors, what you're learning and how you're bringing your sense of self-worth in, and your new direction, your feeling of empowerment, I would say don't overdo it. Don't overdo what you're doing, because at the end of this transit, you're going to need all of your strength, so that you can stabilize, put down really, really good foundation. So do it to the level that you feel comfortable with, but don't tire yourself out, because that could be a recipe for disaster, almost like where you're borrowing from your bank account of energy, but not putting anything in. So I would say reciprocity is a really, really important thing during this time. And that's likely to be something that you'll be exploring. So anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Aquarius. Like I said, this is a really important transit for you because, Saturn is one of your rulers. But anyway, have a good one, and catch you real soon in another forecast. Hey there, Pisces. So this is the forecast for you. Talking about Saturn going into Aries. Now, as you probably know, if you like astrology, Saturn has been in your sign since March 2023, and you're probably sick and tired of him now. I mean, he does definitely serve a function for sure. However, we do get a bit tired of him. He's quite a tiring energy. He is the energy of longevity, of aging, of responsibility, and controlling things, and creating structures, and he can be a bit exhausting. And so you've had him since 2023 going through your first house, which is about your body and your personality, what people know about you. It's really like about you being reborn. And so I remember very, very clearly how I was feeling when he was going through my first house. I was quite tired and I felt really old. I noticed my skin was aging quite a bit and I felt quite clunky and creaky in my body. So most likely during this time, your whole perception of what it is about you has changed quite a bit. You may well have felt a little bit older and been looking to define yourself a bit more, to see how it all fits in together. But it would have given you a bit of a challenge about your identity, that helped you to get a bit clearer. So you might have felt that you've had to tightly define who you are and let go of all those parts of you that really aren't real or practical, that don't work. So, Saturn is always trying to make things fit for purpose. So anything that wasn't fit for purpose about you and your body has had to go. And so from this, as you're moving to Saturn in the second house, in the sign of Aries, you're coming with that sense of, yeah, I've already worked out a bit about myself. I've already realized what I'm not. And now I'm moving into this part, which is all about my resources, my work, my expectations for financial reward. How comfortable am I to receive? Do I feel like I deserve things? But this is also about self-worth. I really think this part of the chart is a lot to do with self-worth, because if you don't see the value in yourself, you won't be able to receive money when people say, here, have this, because I really value you. You'll be like, no, 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 no. So this is all about building self-worth. And I think this is one of the best aspects of Saturn coming into the second house. This is here to build your self-worth. But whilst this is happening, I would say Saturn gives us a challenge. So if you've been sleeping on the job of self-worth, if you haven't been paying attention to what you're worth and what you're about, and if you haven't been valuing yourself, you may well, I always think the planets give us a little awareness. They give us an experience to have a bit of a shake-up. So you might find there are some shake-ups in terms of your self-worth, and you might find that they come from older people, because Saturn is a bit of an elder, so you might get a bit of a wake-up call that really feels painful, but is really there to wake you up, to say, hang on, I'm not going to have any of that. I am worth something, and I'll not let you talk to me like that. So this can really be a time when the elderly or old, or the energy of that sort of Saturn energy, it kind of is an affront. It's getting you to take yourself a lot more seriously. It's really getting you to be stronger and more resilient. So I think resiliency is something that comes with this. Now, if you've been quite sensible with your money and your work during this time, and if you valued your security a lot, which I'm guessing is why people do put money away at some level, you might find that Saturn makes things a bit easier, because I always think Saturn rewards those who take themselves seriously, or who help themselves, who look after themselves, who nurture themselves. So you might find Saturn gives you opportunities to put away a little bit more money, and to help you do it a little bit more effectively. So you might find there are new ways to go deeper, and new ways to create much more resource. In your business, whether you're working for somebody else or you're working for yourself, Saturn could show as a bit of a challenge, from, again, an older or an authority, somebody who's authoritative. It could come as a bit of a challenge, but it's there to get you a lot more responsible, to take responsibility for how you are earning your money. So again, I said this earlier, actually, in a different reading, that when Saturn goes into the seventh, it's a bit like going to the garage, with your car, and the mechanic goes, oh, it's going to cost you. I mean, Saturn can really kind of cost you here in the second house, because, without money, it's difficult to make it's difficult to live, isn't it? It always feels like we're trying to earn money and make the money work for us. So there's a lot you'll be learning with this. Mostly, I think, there is this feeling of necessity that your security needs to be sort of tightened up, that you might need to tighten your belt or be a bit more serious. And so I guess what I'm saying here is, the more you can take yourself seriously and your self-esteem seriously, develop your self-worth, and realize really truly who you are and what gift you have for the world, which should be rewarded in some way. This is the challenge of Saturn in your second house. Now, after this happens on the 13th of April 2028, it's going to be moving into the sign of Taurus, in this part of the chart where you're starting to move your skills out and share your skills in your community. So whatever you're building right now, even if it feels a little bit isolating, and it feels like you're working really, really, really hard, and there's no break, there's no space, and it might feel a little bit heavy, what I'd like you to know is it's 3 years from now, in 2028, things are about to spread far and wide, and also with a community feel. So you might find that what you're learning right now is something that can be like, one question you might find really useful is to ask yourself, how can what I do work for more people? How can I impact the whole community that I live in? How can I impact a community that may be around the world? So you might find that during this time with Saturn in the second house, that you're building an idea that could actually prosper the whole world. So keep that in mind. You know, if there's any skills that you need, you know, maybe AI marketing, I don't know, there will be all sorts of different skills that you might need to bring in your idea and hone it and practice it and work with it, because from 2028, if not before, things will start really moving and shifting. So I hope that's helpful. The last thing I want to say, and it might not be obvious here from this little graphic, but you know, Saturn is moving on the 25th of May, but he is popping back into Pisces and then fully into Aries from the 14th of February 2026. So you might see that until February of next year, you're kind of dancing between these two positions. So, you know, your personal identity and how clear you are about who you are and your body and your boundaries, and taking yourself seriously, is also flowing with how that relates to your work and your money and how your self-worth is evolving. I mean, you could say that these two houses are very much about self. Like, this is who am I, and this is kind of like, how am I rewarded for being who I am, you know? So this is quite a journey. I mean, you really are taking yourself seriously. This is the core crux of this whole transit. So I hope that's helpful to you, Aries. So sorry, Pisces. So much love to you. I hope this goes smoothly and gracefully. Anyway, loads and loads of love to you, and catch you another time. Bye for now. So there you have it. They are my forecasts for Saturn going into Aries and then back into Pisces and then back into Aries. As always, I try and show that these movements of the planets are part of a whole cycle. You know, it's not just about it going into Aries and it's in a particular house, but it's the story of what it meant in Pisces to now what it means in Aries and to what it will mean when it goes into Taurus. It's part of a continuous cycle. So I hope you found that helpful. If I can be of any help, feel free to book an appointment with me. All my details are below. Or you might find my membership really helpful too. You know, there's daily forecasts now, starting literally from tomorrow when Saturn goes into Aries. There are extra forecasts. I give an extra 4 forecasts for each sign of the zodiac about relationships and connections, and also career and ambition. So there's also loads and loads of different other ways that I can help you. So all the details are below, but you know, you're not on your own. We're all going through this. Saturn going through Aries is going to get us all to up our game. And I think that's the thing that we're all focusing on right now. So anyway, loads and loads of love to you. Take care wherever you are in the world. Lots and lots of love. Bye for now.